What advice do you give a new widow? For a lot of people, it's tough. It's really hard. I remember when I lost my husband back in 2019, I heard a lot of advice, and there were a lot of people who had the best intentions who were trying to console me or help me navigate this next chapter of my life. But what I discovered was that if you haven't gone through this experience, especially being young, especially being, while you're still building the rest of your life, it's really hard to know what it is that a new widow needs to hear. And so it was really important for me to make this video because whether you are consoling a new young widow or you are a new young widow yourself, I wanted to share some advice that I wish I would have heard when I had initially started my journey as a young widow. I was 30 years old when my husband passed. My son was 3 years old, and I just had this wide range of emotions. I remember there were days where I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to be bothered. I Brushing my teeth was a win because the grief was just so heavy. And oftentimes the only reason I got out of bed was for my son. And so if you are a new young widow or you are wanting to console and advise a new young widow, one of the things that you really need to know is you have permission to feel however you want to feel, sis. It's okay. Oftentimes, I would find myself feeling shame for not wanting to get out of bed, feeling embarrassed and weak because there were times where I would just cry uncontrollably. And I would try to hide it from my son. There were times where I couldn't, and just judging myself. And when I would feel these emotions coming on, wanting to stop it or bring it down. And what that did was it just suppressed it. And eventually it came out. And so for a young widow who just lost their spouse, my advice to you would be like, don't judge yourself. Don't beat yourself up, sis. You are going through what probably, if not the most traumatic, one of the most traumatic events you'll ever experience in your life. There's no way to prepare. There's no way to really control what you're feeling. So just feel. Another thing I found myself doing was when I was happy, feeling guilty. Like, should I be grieving right now? Should I be sad right now? Am I allowed to laugh? Am I allowed to enjoy life right now? I used to live in South Florida, and going to the beach was one of our favorite things to do as a family. My son and I still love the water. And I remember there were moments being at the beach and just being in the moment and being happy and enjoying my family, enjoying my friends. And there would be a thought that would cross my mind like, is this okay? Yes, yes, it's okay. It's okay. And you will find that you will have this mix of emotions, these ups and downs, where today you may be feeling great and tomorrow you won't. And the day after that, you will. And it is fine. Which leads me into advice number two, or tip number two. We'll just call them tips. Tip number two: focus on surviving well. Now, you may be scratching your head like, what does that mean? Surviving well means focusing on what needs to be done right now. And right now could mean a lot of different things. For me, the reason I say surviving well is because innately it's in our DNA to survive. That is the whole reason we're here, right? Like, I'm not a scientist, but evolution, we change, we evolve to survive. And so when we're going through this traumatic event of losing our spouse, we develop new habits to deal with the new emotions. And sometimes those habits can work for us or they can work against us. They can be um, counter to the outcomes that we want to have. And so when it comes to surviving well, I want to tell you, now is not the time to be superwoman. Okay. I'm talking to my old self right now, but I'm talking to you too. And I hope you hear my heart. Now is not the time to be superwoman, sis. Now is a time to focus on what needs your attention, because your energy, your resources are limited because you're going through it. That's just what it is. You are going through the loss of a piece of yourself, in addition to the loss of this person that you were building your complete future with. Or maybe there were other things going on, but whatever it was, this was the person that you were laying your head down to every night, and now they're gone. That is major. And so you're using all of your energy and your resources, whether you know it or not, to just function. So when it comes down to things like brushing your teeth, washing your hair, eating, that's taking energy. So just focus on that. Don't worry about, is the house spick and span from ceiling to floor? Nah, sis, just vacuum, make sure ain't nothing crawling on the floor, and that's it. Or call someone to do it for you, which I'll get into here in a second. But my point is that don't worry about things that don't really need your attention. And that's really on you to define for yourself. I know for me, the things that needed my attention were my daily hygiene, making sure that my son also kept up with his daily hygiene. We were both fed. The bills were paid in terms of, making sure that things didn't go into default. And that was it. I didn't really worry about the minuscule. There were things that just didn't matter anymore. If I don't return a phone call today, I'm sorry, charge it to my mind and not my heart. Things like that. So if you need me to dive a little bit more into that point or have more discussion on that topic, I would love to. Let me know in the comments. But going into tip number 3, which is creating an emergency response plan. Now, I'm not talking about like if there's a fire in your house or an earthquake or a hurricane. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, in conjunction with tip number 2, what you want to do is you want to tap into those support systems that you have access to. And if you don't, I'll get to you in just a moment. But for those of you who have people that say things like, if you need anything, let me know, or like your parents or your in-laws or your friends, your coworkers, people around you, they want to serve you. They want to help you. I hope you hear me. People want to help you. And a lot of times they'll say, if you need something, just reach out, because they don't know how to help you, but they know that they want to. Remember those people. Make a list if you need to. And what I want you to do, in a very practical sense, make a list of who you think would be best suited for a specific task. So thinking about the surviving well, there were days where I didn't want to cook, or I didn't want to clean, or I didn't want to do laundry. I knew that I could text my sister like, hey, can you bring food? Or ask my mom like, hey, could you come over? Because my mom would just come over and clean. I wouldn't have to say anything. um, or friends that would come and take my son for, a little bit and get him out of the house so I could just have some alone time. And you can have these conversations with these people ahead of time and say something like, hey, if I text you this phrase, or if I text you this emoji of, a snooze emoji or a fork and spoon emoji, like that's what it means, so that they know when they receive it and they see it, hey, she needs my help right now. Let me go take care of that. Now, again, it has to be people that you can depend on, and you have the conversation with them ahead of time, because when you're in the thick of it, when you're in crisis mode, when you're in emergency mode, you're not going to want to have the conversation. So the reason that you're creating the plan ahead of time and you're putting the system in place ahead of time is so that when you need it, you just have to push one button and it's done. Now, for those of you who may not have a huge support group or people that can handle all of the things you feel you would need help with, or maybe you are alone and you don't have anyone, that's okay too. That's okay. And just know that you are not fully alone. Okay. But if you don't have people around you physically that can do things for you, you can create these emergency plans for yourself. So even still, I don't live around a lot of family right now. I do have a small support system, but something that I like to do is keep frozen meals in the freezer. Let me tell you something. Grab you an Instapot and throw some chicken breasts in there, some chicken thighs, and let it go. Or just prep something and freeze it so that if you need it, you can pull it out and warm it up, and you don't have to worry about cooking a whole meal. Another tip, this is for my mommies, is figure out what are some places around town where you can kind of not necessarily just drop your kids, but I know for me, Urban Air is a place that my son loves. It's a trampoline park, and I can literally like let him go and post up in a spot where I can see him, but he's not pulling energy from me. He's having a good time. He's distracted, and I can kind of like decompress and pull myself together. Sometimes I'll take a journal. Sometimes I'll just walk around and follow him. And I find that helps when I can't get a sitter and I don't want to feel guilty for keeping him locked in the house, but also want him to have something to do. So there's different ways that you can manage regardless of the size of your tribe. Which brings me to my last point. Tip number 4 is get connected to a community of people who have a shared experience. I cannot tell you how critical that is. For the first year and a half, I was not connected. And it was challenging. There were moments where I thought I was going nuts. I thought that I was losing my mind and I was the only one losing my mind. Something that, and I've talked about it on my platform, it breaks my heart, but there's so many widows that struggle with mental health, struggle with depression to the point where suicide ideation creeps in. And I know that I experienced that too. A lot of widows go through that. And I'll probably do another video here soon about it. But I say all of that to say is that you are not alone. While your spouse is unique, individual, and you both had something special, I am not denying that. But what I am saying is that the experience of grief and loss, especially as a young wife, sis, when you get down to it, the pain is universal, and you need people around you that can understand what you're going through, that can encourage you when you need it, can lift you up when you can't stand up by yourself, and can give you a quick swift in the butt, kick in the butt when you need it too. I know that I have since discovered some really amazing widowed friends that they get it. And we have conversations about some of the nuanced things that happen, especially as young widowed moms. And so it's really important that you stay connected to community because they're the ones that are really going to carry you through this initial phase of adjusting to this new way of life. And so, um, yeah, I really hope that that was helpful. Well, before I let you go, you may be asking yourself, where can I get connected? So if there isn't a local support group, which I know when I was living in South Florida, there was one. There are actually some, if you just Google grief support group near me, you can find some online that meet or find some online that meet in person, as well as Facebook groups. I have a Facebook group. I'll link it down below for you, as well as a few others, young widow groups where you can vent, you can ask questions, you can get advice. And so those are really helpful too, especially if you are meeting with people in person and they may not be available. You can go online and have both. I had both. I'm looking to get connected here in Dallas again, but in the meantime, I have found that um, leveraging the power of social media has really been helpful. So now we can wrap up. I really hope these have been really helpful. I would love to hear if you're a young widow and you have advice for some of our friends who may have been in a similar position. Please leave your advice below. Let's collect these and help one another out. And if this video was helpful, please go ahead and watch another video. I will link it somewhere here for you to check out. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.